You're gonna have to forgive me now too. I know normally I'm a big Windows PowerPoint fan. I think PowerPoint's probably one of the better presenters, but I'm really trying to do this whole open source thing. So I'm running out of Open Office Impress right now, and let's see if I'm impressed with using the damn thing. But it's not gonna look as pretty. It's gonna be a little grainy and some JPEG artifacts. So I'm sorry for the lesser quality graphics here, but please just bear with me. And that's also why you're going to see the slide bars and stuff too, because one of the stupid annoying effects of OpenOffice is that you can't escape out of a presentation and resume at the same slide. It starts it over from the beginning. So that makes it hard to kind of bop out of the slides and into a demo and then come back into the, in the middle back of the slideshow. So I'm trying to deal with it and work around it, but just bear with me and hopefully, it won't completely suck. So, haven't missed anything yet. So. Of course, if you haven't figured it out yet, you're at the Novell, the Forgotten OS, and I am RFP, and this is Black Hat 2002, in case you forgot. One thing I do want to mention right off the bat, too, is they're trying to do some feedback form stuff. I doubt most of you will hop online and do that, so I would like to actually request that during the talk, if you find something I do really annoying or really cool or something like that, write it on the back of your business card, and at the end, if you can just toss your business cards on the stage over here, or just wing them at me, or throw them and try to hit me in my eye or something, fine. But I want to use that as a relative kind of feedback formy type thing, because I'm up here and I prance and dance and do weird stuff and take my clothes off and all these things, and I don't know if you guys like it or not. So it'd be really good just to know, whether or not that, yeah, you want to see more nudity, or yeah, please keep your clothes on. So, let me know one way or another, and if you could do it like that. And then I get the bonus of getting your name and email, maybe dropping an email and stuff, and doing some more talking offline or after the show and things like that. Or sending pictures, yes. I get lots of requests for the original slide backgrounds and all the original graphics too, so if you want those, just email me. That's Alyssa Milano, in case you guys don't know. So, and this slide is obviously very different than what's actually printed in your big book. Why? Because this slideshow was made a couple weeks ago, because all these problems are relatively new. So you don't have the print of the slides. You can get it online from my website, and it'll also be given to the Black Hat website. For those of you not aware what my website is, it's right there at wiretrip.net. All right, so let's start. Little introduction. This talk is going to be network-centric. You'd think from the title that, we're not going to be talking about Windows all that much. It's going to be basically dealing with all the web problems that are found in default Novell installations. All this stuff is turned on and there. I'm not going to really be focusing on anything non-web related. I like the web. That's my playground, and that's what I know the best. And there's lots of areas, lots of web-related things to play with too, so it's enough to have a whole speech about. And of course, a lot of these are publicly unknown, quote-unquote 0-day. While Novell knows about them, some other people know about them in some capacity, but it's still not public. There are underground people. I just found out last night that one of the bigger problems in my presentation, I guess, was talked about on some private mailing lists in the past week. I think in response to the fact that I announced that I'm having a Novell talk, they went and found the same bugs and stuff. But, generally these problems are not publicly known. It'll be news to hopefully most of the crowd. The whole 5 Netware admins are actually in the crowd. You guys raise your hand if you actually use Netware. So, all right, so there's a couple. So, you guys will probably do the whole Lotus Notes talk thing where at the end I show how bad it is and y'all run out and call home and, tell them to fix the stuff right off the bat. So we'll see. And of course, everything I mentioned here has workarounds. It's not like I'm going to do something devastatingly evil and then say, oh, and you're screwed. Just live with it. So you can fix all of this stuff on your own right off the bat. So it's not going to be horribly devastating, hopefully. And of course, why Netware? Well, Netware 6 actually has a bunch of new web-enabled services. Netware's actually ditched, or I don't want to say ditched, but they're moving away from the IPX model and focusing more internally on the product using IP, Internet Protocol. So, and there's a lot of web-enabled things like iFolder and some of the extra add-on service and stuff. So they're really embracing and adding more web-rich features into the OS. So it's actually, it's got a fair number of web stuff to actually look at. And of course, I say they're using suspect components. They're using Perl CGIs. They're using Apache Tomcat Java servlets, and they're using all these Netscape enterprise servers. So they're reusing the same components that have had security problems in other areas. So they're just as likely to have security problems on Novell, whether regardless really if you run on Novell or Microsoft or Unix or whatever. So, but they're using stuff that is suspect and is, capable of having problems. So, of course, we should actually look and see if it has problems, because no one seems to be giving it just a really good, thorough review. There are a couple people releasing a couple sample CGI problems came across in the last couple months, or they'll do a spot check, and I found this one little bug here and one little bug there. It's kind of the whole PHP nuke syndrome, where every week you have yet another cross-site scripting problem posted about PHP nuke. You think if someone just sat down and enumerated all 300,000 found in PHP nuke and just stuck it in one advisory and said, okay, tons of stuff. But instead, I guess they're just going for the long-term exposure where they just do one a day for the next 3 years. So, it'd be nice if someone just, They get paid more advertising. So, it's just someone needs to just sit down and just, whirlwind through and try to, low-hanging fruit, whatever, but just get all this stuff out of the way rather than just doing this whole trickle. Oh, I found another one. And well, if you find a bug, odds are they'll probably have the same type of bug elsewhere. There could be, so, it's due diligence just to look and see if that bug reoccurs in the same form, within the same product, 2 lines later in the code. It doesn't take that much more effort, and just a little more thorough type of research. And of course, Netware is actually still common in the enterprise. I come across a lot of clients who actually still have it rolled out, particularly for directory services. NDS is actually a pretty solid directory, and it has been for quite a long time. It's ported to lots of other platforms way before AD came along. And there's a lot of people not uprooting their NDS installs to replace it with AD, at least not with the clients I'm dealing with. So, it's still there, and it's in some places it's switched to a legacy type installations, but it still can be found. And that just reminded me to turn off my cell phone. So, but it can definitely still be found. So it's not like, Netware, who uses that anymore? No one. There were a couple people who raised their hands. There are people using it. So, and of course, some of the previous web vulns, I'm not going to go through and, enumerate all these, but these are basically, I went through my little vuln database that I keep and grabbed everything that's web Novell related in the last 4 years, and that's pretty much it. A lot of group-wise stuff and some other various sample script problems. There were 2 buffer overflows, but beyond that, not a whole lot. The NDS object browsing, that was actually done by NMRC a long time ago. So yeah, some of that stuff dates back to I think 96. So it's pretty darn old. And of course, what platforms I've actually looked at, a lot of these problems were found in the last 3 to 16 months on any platform, including Netware 5.1. generic, like no support packs, and then SP4 applied on 5.1, and of course 6.0. 6.0 eval, which is basically what was downloaded offline from Novell because I don't actually have a valid Netware 6 license. So maybe Novell will give me one. I don't know. We'll see. They might hate me after this talk, so who knows. But yeah, so I assume the eval version is close enough. It's live stuff. It just expires every couple of days, and I have to constantly reinstall. But for the most part, those are the platforms I'm looking at. I'm not looking at Internetware 4.0, 3.0, anything earlier. And I'm not really focused on the various layers of support packs in between 5.1 and 5.1 SP4. Just kind of default with nothing, the default with the latest support pack, and then beyond. And there's actually not a whole lot of web fixes for SP4 beyond. I think there's one, and I did apply it. But there are a couple updates beyond SP4, but nothing that really counts as far as this is concerned. So let's look at Netware 6 out of the box. What I've done here is kind of diagrammed out. On the left, you see all the ports. These are all the ports that run a web server of some sort. And then, of course, you'll see then I grouped it and listed to exactly what web servers are listening on what ports. So, of course, the 80 and 443, they run the Netscape Enterprise, which is also known as the Netware Enterprise Web Server, originally ported from Netscape to Novell by a company called Novonix, which existed for not exactly, but relatively around 6 months. I think it was mid-1996, Netscape and Novell spun off a sub-company called Novonix. And that was, mid-1996. January 1997, January 17th, they announced that they actually had their first product, which was Netscape, basically ported to Novell. And so that's January 17th. On January 23rd, Novell released their quarterly statement, said they're not doing as well, and also said that Novonix is going to be no more. They're going to be subsumed back into Novell. So the company existed for 6 whole months between 1996 and 1997. And actually, and to this day, they still use the term Novonix all over the place, too, which is really interesting. But, a little bit of history lesson there. So anyway, so the Netscape Enterprise server listens on 80 and 443, and then you have Apache. Now, Apache is a recent introduction into Netware 6, And you'll see there that it listens on port 2200, 2211. That's running the system manager. It's remote manager is what's technically called. A lot of Netware admins will know this as like the actually, let me back up here. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. The 2200 and 2211 is Web Services Manager. That manages all the various web services. The Netware stack listening on 8008 and 8009, that's the Remote Manager. That manages basically local system configuration and lets you actually pull up debuggers and stuff right over there over the web interface. So the Netware stack in 8000 actually deals with local system management. The stuff on 2200, that deals with web service management, managing all the, basically the Netscape Enterprise Server Administrative Console, rewritten and done into Apache, and plus managing things like iManage and I assume iFolder, and a bunch of all the extra extended Novell web offerings, like their whole entire search engine thing that they have for the web platforms and stuff. But you see Apache then also listens in the 5500 or 55,000 port range up there. That's just the basic plain vanilla, you've installed Apache type stuff. I assume if I didn't install the Netscape or Netware Enterprise Server, it would have stuck Apache up on port 80 and 443. But since the Netscape stuff is there, it sticks Apache on these other ports. But this is all default. The only box, I unchecked a lot of stuff, so I didn't install a whole lot of anything. And the only thing I added beyond default was I checked the box for Netware Enterprise Server. And then I just let it install, and I saw what it gave me. And so it gave me 9 web server listening ports. And a couple of them are doubled up because some are SSL and some are not. And you'll see the 81 actually just redirects to port 8008 and does a bunch of weird things. But I mean, if you see 9 listening web server ports on a default install, I mean, that's a lot. If I would have installed iFolder, it would have given me 2 more. So up to 11 out of the box. And of course, both Apache and Netscape have configs to feed into Apache Tomcat. For Netware 6, they use Tomcat for their servlet engine. For Netware 5.1, they use IBM WebSphere as an optional component for the servlet engine. So you see, there's lots of web servers running. And of course, and each one has their all fun little configs and has different stuff loaded. So like, for instance, the Netscape one. I mean, it has both servlet and anything.jsp is given off to the servlet engine, the Apache Tomcat. Anything in the SP directory, as well as ending with ASP or NSP, is given off to this NSN Net Basic Scripting Handler. Anything in the LCGI directory, it functions as a CGI bin. It's just basically precompiled CGIs and stuff. Those are programs to run. Anything in the Net Basic directories and the NSN directories are yet more Net Basic weird add-on script handlers. Then you have anything in the Perl directory. It has a bunch of Perl programs that you can run and do. The My Network thing is this whole weird user NDS browsing thing. It requires authentication, so I consider it safe enough. I'm not really going to touch on it, but that's yet another little dynamic handler thing that's going on. Then of course there's stuff going on in the WebDav directory, the tilde user directory, and the SC directories are even more handlers that this stuff does. The SC is SUS, the SUS scripting language and stuff. That actually isn't. All the handlers, the web server is configured to actually run the handlers, but the handlers actually aren't shipped anymore with Netware 6. So they just left in this old config, but didn't actually ship the NLMs and the DLL equivalents to actually run the stuff. But if from the Microsoft world, because a lot of people are familiar with the Windows way of life, all of these are equivalent to all your IDA, IDC, IDQ, HTR, HTW, and all those extra handlers added in. Each one of these is exactly like that, and each one of these is capable of being prone to the same type of stuff you'd see like in the IDC overflow and the IDA cross-site scripting and all that stuff. So you see, there's a lot of dynamic handlers and stuff enabled, by default, beyond what's just normally happening in the normal server. This is all extra added extensions, all on by default. And of course, on the Apache config, on all ports, all of the servlet and the JSP requests, anything in the servlet directory ending in JSP, get fed off to the Apache Tomcat engine again. And then limited to only, in the Apache config, but limited only to the 2200 port range is, again, anything in the ASP directory, ASP and SP pages are all Net Basic scripts. Anything in the Perl directory and anything ending in .pl is given to the Perl handler. And all the NSN and .bas basic scripts are, again, given to the Net Basic handler. So, you got the Netscape, which has all those extra features loaded in. You got the Apache server running on more port, which have some of the more features loaded in. And so what else do we got? Well, we have the Netware stack. That's the remote manager. Now, of course, it requires authentication before you can even get at it. So pretty much, assuming that an attacker doesn't have a valid username password to log in, it's relatively secure, because if they can't log in, they can't get to what's inside of it, so who cares what's loaded in it? And the only potential problem that could have is that if there's a vulnerability in the authentication mechanism, which of course did happen. April 2002 report, buffer overflow, and the authentication method of the remote manager. So, that's fixed now, and that's okay. But for the most part, I'm not going to deal with the HTTP stack and the remote manager, just because, hopefully it's to the point where people will be blocking that, turning it off, and even if the attacker could get to the port, they still need valid admin login credentials, which they won't have. So it's not worth talking about, because there's a lot of other stuff anyway. So okay, let's actually just jump right into the vulnerabilities. Enough about this background stuff. You guys are here for 0 days, so let's just give it to you. Feel the tension. So here's your 0 day, cross-site scripting. Yeah, right. There's a bunch of little stuff to start off with. Let's just get it out of the way. env.pl, the lcgi tests.nlm, the env.bas, and the allfield.jsc. A lot of these are just similar to the standard Apache test CGI, which just spits out a bunch of environment variables. Those environment variables can have some path information and stuff. For the most part, it's an extremely light, really who cares type of problem. And I've started 3 of them. They were recently reported in the past months. One of those things where it's like I found this, I'm making the talk, and I'm hoping no one finds this stuff before I talk about it. And some people started releasing advisories, finding it independently. So it's like, damn, there goes another slide. Damn, there goes another slide. So, but for the most part, one of them wasn't discovered, but it's a really obvious one anyway. But the one thing that's interesting, or at least to keep in mind, any test CGI, anything that spits back environment variables is most likely going to be vulnerable to cross-site scripting. And I gave an example down there on how that is. You just stick it in the URL parameter, and the web server will stick an environment variable, and the script will spew it back. So like env.basic, the basic file I have displayed there, for example, not only is it great for cross-site scripting, you stick a script in it like that, it'll give it back to the client 4 times. So whatever you give, whatever script you give it, it's definitely be thrown back at the browser in 4 different places. So it's definitely cross-site scripting. But cross-site scripting, yeah, it is a problem. It isn't a problem. Whatever. There is a talk about it that goes in a little more detail in some of the scenarios. It's a really unique niche type of exploit that and it's really hard exploit avenue. But some people, like to worry about it. So if you worry about it, then there you go. So let's get a little bit bigger. The NetBasic handler is pretty interesting. The way the NetBasic scripts are written is that in BASIC you have a bunch of subroutines. So you define your logic in your subroutines. And what it is when you call a NetBasic script, it just executes the main, literally the subroutine named main, and executes that subroutine. What's really interesting is that you can then call, or you can tell it to just execute different subroutines by using the colon in the subroutine name. So what's really interesting, particularly with the fdir.bas, the fdir.basic script requires you to log in via NDS username password. And once you give it username and password, then it lets you browse the volumes and the directories on those volumes, right? But you got to log in first. Well, because of this kind of weird quirk in NetBasic, you can just give the show volume and show directory subroutine names and skip that login crap and just go straight to enumerating all the volumes and all the directories and stuff and cruising the file system. This is a bug, and this is one of the really weird bugs because I'm not quite sure what's going on. This works great under Netware 5.1. By the time I installed SP4 and even in 6.0, it's still there, and it's still a NetBasic handler, but the script doesn't work anymore. And I'm not sure if, it doesn't work even in the proper context anymore. Now, I don't know if they fixed the NetBasic handler to remove this bug, but then also broke all the scripts in the process and didn't bother fixing them, or if it's just a server config, because I've done literally 30 Netware installs in the last 16 months, and there's always something that doesn't work, and it's always something different every time. All web-related stuff. So it just could be a flakiness issue or what. I'm not sure. But it was a problem at one time. It might still be a problem. Who knows? But it's just something interesting. And all NetBasic scripts are would be vulnerable to this. And of course, default servlets and stuff. 5.1 with SP4, again, that's IBM WebSphere, does ship with two particular interesting servlets. It ships with a bunch, but a lot of them are lame and boring, like hello world stuff, who cares? The session servlet. What this actually does is if you use the actually internal Java session management, where it handles all the session IDs and maintains session state and stuff, and it's under the JavaX, Java extension. If you use the internal Java session management mechanisms, you go to this applet, it'll just spit out all the current actively open session IDs for all of them. So if you're using this legitimately, for a shopping cart application, I pull up this servlet and it gives me a listing of all the session IDs of all the active shopping carts. Which of course is all you need is to take that session ID and plop it in somewhere else, and bam, you got someone else's count, someone else's shopping cart. That easy. So that's not too good. The servlet manager, this is reconfiguring the IBM WebSphere container, doing things like turning off the entire servlet support, loading in additional servlets, maybe malicious, you'd have to be able to upload them somehow first. And even doing fun things, I believe, like you'd be able to redirect the error log, so you can say etc pass, or well, it's not Unix, sys : whatever. System autoexec.ncf, whatever interesting file, you say that is now my log file for servlet errors, and then say show me the servlet log, error log, and then be able to view the file and stuff like that. So there are various weird things. It is password protected, but the default username is servlet and the default password is manager, and that's actually kind of hard coded in the config that's stuck in the I think it's one of the .properties Java files. So. And then on the Netware 6 side of things, it ships with a servlet called Snoop Servlet. Historically, people have said this is a problem. I personally don't see what the really big problem is. It's kind of like a cross-site scripting type thing. A little bit of information disclosure, not a whole hell of a lot. But it's there, and if you think that's a problem and you're worried and concerned about it, then, be concerned about it. And some of the, one thing I didn't actually put on the slide too is that the Apache Tomcat that also ships with Netware 6 has a bunch of default user accounts installed under the Tomcat server, so there's some things that administrative servlets and stuff that may be protected by username and password. There's like 3 or 4 actual username password combos that are shipped by default and have various rights and stuff, so another thing to consider or keep in mind. The NDS object.nlm overflows. Now we're getting a little more interesting, but we're still stuck on sample script issues. Netware 5.1 with SP4. Netware 5.1 in general ships with this nds.obj NLM, which it basically allows NDS browsing over the web. Just, hey, you call this and it says, here's my tree, and you click on that and you start breaking it down into organizations, and you start drilling down just like a file structure, or it's much like browsing the registry on Windows. It just breaks out the entire NDS tree. Only the public components, nothing horribly bad, but the basic public exposure of the tree. It has a nice beautiful overflow, 170 characters right after the name, or a bunch in the operation URL parameter. Gives you an A-bend, and that A-bend shows that EIP is exactly what you need it to be. In this case, the exact characters we gave it. So this is basically a textbook's buffer overflow. No heap crap to worry about, no Unicode, mangling of stuff. I mean, this is literally taken, if you had Netware shellcode, you plop it in, you run it, you're done. Buffer overflows don't get easier than this. So something to definitely keep in consideration. Now the one thing that's nice is that I don't know of any existing Netware shellcode, to actually exploit these things. And I've worked with NMRC and Simple Nomad and stuff, and they've been at this a way lot longer and understand it a way lot better than I do. And they've said they've had their hand at it, and it's a lot harder than it looks, due to the way that Netware actually has its memory models and how it manages external libraries and things like that. So if someone's extremely ambitious and wants to have a good, wow, first in the industry impression, make some Netware shellcode. Have your hand at it. But beyond that, I mean, I don't know of any that exists, and and in general, it's really hard. So even though there's buffer overflows, the actual capability of exploiting these things may not. I mean, I don't want to say it's not possible, because I'll be proven wrong probably, but I mean, I don't foresee it happening anytime soon. So, but hopefully someone will make me eat my words, maybe, I don't know, but we'll see. But in general, buffer overflows are not as immediate of a threat as I think that some other overflows are, just because of the lack of research in the exploitability of actual overflows on Netware. And of course, Network 6 doesn't ship with the NDS, OBJ, NLM. What's really interesting is that it ships with the configuration file. It ships with the configuration directory with all the supporting graphics and extra stuff, but just lacks the actual one NLM script itself, which means that it's basically on the install, they just ripped that one file out, but left all the other cruft there, which is kind of weird. You know, they think they remove it all. It's all in the same directory. But in general, it doesn't ship with Netware 6, so you don't have to worry about it. Source.jsp file reading. The Tomcat server, this is the view code type of problems which are plaguing all kinds of servers and stuff. Tomcat ships with a source.jsp source code browser in its examples, little cluster of files. And of course, you can use your .. tricks to escape out of the web root and read any file on the server. It doesn't actually work with a straight .. I think it actually checks to see if there's a ... and removes it. But what you can do is use the %2e, which is just the encoding for the dot. So you just %2e, %2e slash %2e, %2e slash, which is just still .. slash encoded, and it works. And here, you can actually then, I have an example where, you can view the etc console.log, and actually have, if you don't believe me, I'll actually demo it too. Where you can just essentially view files. So I'm going to pull up here. Escape is pulling up the source. I didn't specify a file, so it's not happy. So allow me to type something in really fast when I set on the microphone. All goes to plan. Okay, so there's my console.log, right? This is just, a log of all the various things that are going on in the network console and stuff. So you can see you can just start fetching files. Now what's really interesting is that in here, all these handlers and all kinds of extra stuff kind of run in this weird limbo console stage. They're not running as administrator, but it's like the Windows equivalent of local system. So it's like beyond administrator. It can actually get at some stuff that even probably administrator couldn't get at. And there might be a way to tweak some ACLs to keep this from happening, but you can just cruise around and look at any files you want. And of course, reading files, okay, yeah. You can potentially snag the NDS files from the _ netware directory. Now, for those of you not familiar with Netware, Netware keeps all of the Windows equivalent of its registry and passwords and stuff. It keeps it in this _ netware directory, which is actually not normally viewable and accessible going through normal Netware means via just shares and directories and stuff. But it keeps all these various files in there, and that's what essentially username, passwords, and all the other internal configuration options. And essentially also equivalent to Windows SAM. Now we all know you don't want to give out your SAM file because then they pop it into LoftCrack and then crack your passwords and you have everything, right? Well, this is the exact same stuff. And using the source viewer, source.jsp, you actually can request those files. The problem is source.jsp does do a little bit of mangling and adds a little bit of HTML to header and footer. You might be able to strip that out and get it back to its raw binary format because these files are binary gobbledygook. So there's a potential to possibly download the NDS files there, but you might have to do a little bit of reconstructive surgery to make sure they go back the way they were supposed to be. But still a concern. Seeing how I'm doing on time here. Okay, so let's move on to the net basic handler. Let me get a drink first. It's really interesting. They've got a bunch of closed beers up here, and I don't know if they're encouraging the speakers to drink while they're talking or what, but it's weird. Anyway, okay, the NSN handler, I talked about in the beginning how NSN is just a mapped handler and stuff. What's interesting about this one, normally it comes with a bunch of samples, net basic scripts, big deal. They're in this, the NSN/web directory. And supposedly anything you request is only limited to that directory. Now it also comes with a bunch of actually usable utility net basic scripts. They're in a non-accessible web directory in the /NSN/util directory. Now these do more various things as far as just various utility functions for managing a network server, adding users, and just doing cool things. What's interesting with the NSN handler is that, again, you can use some .. tricks to escape out of the web root and start executing arbitrary net basic scripts plopped anywhere on the server. This is a really bad problem if you have, let's say, a public folder where people can upload files. They upload a malicious .bas file and they use this trick to go in that folder and execute it. But of course, even focusing on just what's given in the utilities in the util directory. There's some pretty interesting stuff that you can play in there too, and I've given a couple examples here. Now the trick to calling these things is if you use a .. slash / Netscape will stop you and say file not found. If you use a .. backslash, Netscape will say bad request. If you use a ... and then an encoded / Netscape will stop you and say bad request. Or if you use a .. encoded backslash, which is the %5c, it works. So it's like, oh, forgot one of the four. So it's what you're doing is you're .. backslash and then util, but you encode the backslash. And of course, Netware is a little bit like Windows. They actually use backslashes for the directory delimiters, unlike Unix, which is /. So you can use forward or backslashes in a web request, and internally it all gets mapped into a backslash. So unlike Unix, where you can't use backslashes to play around with directory games, on Windows and Netware you can actually do that. It gives you an extra avenue of potential exploitation. So I mean, I can give you examples. Now, of course, I actually have a Netware running in VMware, so I'm actually exploiting a real server here. I'll show you the fact that there is a bunch of cool, interesting stuff in the NetBasic directory. Give it a second to load up here. Okay, I'm just using a cheapy little DOS equivalent shell. So you see there's lots of scripts. That's all I want to show you. Now, I'm not going to sit here and enumerate all of them, because that's just kind of a complete waste of time. I've gone through and found a couple interesting ones. Let's pop out of here, and I'll just show you the types of things that could be a problem. So let's just pull up our, let's wait for the NSN handler to load. It's one of those whole things where the first use takes a little bit longer to load. So slist, which is just the server list. Not a big deal. There's only one server on my entire VMware network. Not a problem, but information disclosure. Then you have things like DS browse, which is NDS browsing. So if I typed it right and all is well, and we give it a second, so I'll pull it up. Okay, so now we start getting enumerations of the NDS tree. Now the one thing I don't know, I haven't figured out yet, this exploit doesn't mean it's not possible, but I'm just not aware of it by the time I presented, was that you can pass command line parameters to enumerate larger portions and be recursive and do even more cooler things. I haven't figured out how to pass command line parameters, but if someone was to figure that out, they can do even more interesting things with these commands. But I just kind of show you the types of things that you can do, that are available to attackers when they're playing with these types of stuff. So here's a directory enumeration, just going on down the line, all the stuff on the sys volume. So you can access these scripts. There's a lot more that do even potentially worse things. I'm not going to sit there and look through. There's I don't know. There's a good 30 or 40. I poked through the ones that had interesting names. There's a couple obtuse ones, and they work and don't work for various reasons. There's a couple NetBasic scripts that want Windows GUI interface stuff, right, which isn't provided via the web parameter. So those scripts just puke out automatically. So you can't use those. And there's other BAS scripts scattered, throughout the OS and other NetBasic type related directories. So, I mean, the sky's the limit as far as what's available on there. And if you can upload your own stuff, it's definitely a concern. But in general, I mean, it's possible and it's there. Using .. tricks to access stuff out of web roots is nothing really new. But the thing to consider here is that we've moved from like these sample scripts installed and here's how to abuse them. The solution's always easy there. Just delete the darn sample scripts. And you won't have any of these things. So we're off of sample script problems. Now we're into the handler itself, right? It doesn't matter what sample scripts, and if you remove all the sample scripts, the handler now has a bug that lets me go over and do all kinds of bad things regardless. So we're kind of at a next level, if you will. So let's go into a bigger level, but we'll stay with the same handler. It also has a buffer overflow. Now, unlike the NDS obj.NLM, which only exists on certain platforms, and if they delete it, then it's not a problem anymore, this is an overflow in the handler itself. Again, throw 230 characters as a module name, and you have on Netware 5.1 SP4, clean, nice stack smash. EIP is completely owned by what you pass it, so you can basically tell the computer to execute whatever code wherever it is. So your textbook case for doing your basic buffer overflow. And Netware 6, however, it does A-bend and it does break stuff, but it's not enough to reach EIP. So it's not exploitable in Netware 6 beyond just a potential denial of service with getting the server to constantly A-bend which if you don't have set up to automatically handle, which Netware 6 doesn't by default, could be a potential problem. And I'll illustrate a little later. I don't want to puke the server now because then I can't do demos later on, so I'll puke the server at the end. And of course, this is, being the other one, this is the one I was told that was just publicly released like in the past week too, which kind of sucks because this is the fun one. The Perl handler is pretty much equivalent to having Perl in your CGI bin. Basically, you can give it arbitrary Perl scripts uploaded on the fly to execute. You can say, here's my Perl program, run it for me on the server, would you? And you just upload it by a post request, and there you go. You can run whatever you want. Now, the exploitability of this is basically limited by your Perl skills. Now, of course, there's a lot of people, a lot of hacker types, Perl sucks. Yeah, well, if you knew Perl, you could exploit this. So it's like, finally, it's something I can do. I know Perl. So, yet another reason to know Perl. It's easy, and sometimes it comes in handy. But just the fact that you can upload arbitrary Perl code, and again, this is kind of operating on a whole local system / console thing. So you can play and modify and do what you want to do. And I'll give you a couple examples. I wrote a little exploit program thingy here as an example of to automate a lot of the code writing and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and run it here. I got to put the microphone down so I can type. My cute little upload code.pl. So what I'm going to do is actually upload code to go into, let's upload code. I'll write code right now live code writing on screen, to go ahead and add an extra line to the Netware startup script. Now, Netware admins and stuff, I'll go ahead and show you what that script is like, and I'll prove that it wasn't already rigged and done. So I got to remember what it is. Oh no, Alzheimer's setting in early is what it is. So, yep, I puked the request, hang on. This is the cute little graphical edit program. System. I got time to kill, so this is really what these demos are supposed to do. It's just, keep you entertained by moving pretty colors and me typing. So, all right, so there's the file. And I'll go to the end, and that's the end of the file. My last line is this load Netware 5 idle, which is actually just a one-line tweak for VMware, because Netware under VMware doesn't give back unused CPU cycles. So if you don't load this extra idle module, VMware just sucks up the entire CPU and doesn't give anything back to the host OS. So you have to trick Netware into playing nice under VMware. So anyway, file's fine. I have to escape out of it. Now let's go ahead and let's do something evil here with our little Perl thing. So I'm going to write some code. You can probably see it at the bottom of the screen. I know it's kind of faded, but bear with me. That's completely wrong. And sorry, I have to restart this only because I'm going to overwrite the entire file and not just... I know watching me type is not necessarily the greatest of things, but it just shows it's this easy in 3 lines. Actually 2. We'll cheat and use some Perl stuff. I only use 2 lines, so I'm going to upload that. And if all goes according to plan, when I go in and I'll edit this file and cross my fingers, and then we see my line was added. So the next time this server is restarted, load evil.nlm, whatever that would be. And of course, I can put in whatever. The biggest one being load our console with a static password being whatever password I chosen. In which case then turns on basically telnet access equivalent, our console access, to the Netware server so I can get in. Now, editing this file is, fine, yeah, you throw them in there. Next time the server reboots, who knows when that's going to be. Do you have a way to force the server to reboot? Maybe via Perl you can down it and reboot it and stuff. I don't know, I haven't really looked into it that much because I didn't really care all that much. But, you're editing system configuration files at this point. That simple, that easy. Now, the other thing I remember I was talking about having access to that NDS file where all the username and passwords are saved. Having access to that, I mean, there are cracking utilities for it. Pandora from NMRC actually cracks Netware 4 and Netware 5. I don't think it'll crack 6 yet, right? Yeah, it won't crack 6 yet. Maybe they'll add that feature now that there's a more reason to have that feature. Don't know, but in general, I mean, there are possibilities for offline crackers, pretty much in your loft crack style. So I just want to show you then, you can just as easily download the SAM file, or essentially the password file. So I just requested the nds.01 file. It's not there in the web directory. So now let's go to my cute little uploader thing. I wrote a small little script. I'll show it to you so you don't think I'm pulling wool over your eyes. All right, if you see the script on the bottom, all I do is open out the NDS file and open it up in the web roots, and then just copy all the contents over. Basically, all I'm doing is making a copy. But Perl doesn't have a cute little one-line function for copy. You have to open a file and open another file and read from here and write into there, constantly until they're all done. So that's all this script is doing, is just opening the two files, and while I'm reading from one, writing into the other, and then closing them and being done. So this is just going to copy, hopefully, the NDS file from the hidden registry directory into the web root directory where we can download it. So let's run my cute little Perl upload, and I've got a cheat so I can upload pre-made external files. So, and there we go, so done. Now if I go over here and hopefully if I request this, this is the whole, it's about 1 meg NDS SAM file, equivalent. All the username and passwords are embedded in there. If you scroll down and go through the gobbledygook, as well as server configs, system accounts, all that stuff. Just like downloading the entire Windows registry. And you can go in and tweak and modify values, do all that stuff. So, pretty uncool stuff, and please understand, you can essentially own the server by using these tricks. This upload arbitrary Perl thing, the server's yours. You can shut down, unload NLMs, load malicious ones, upload arbitrary code, upload scripts, modify system configs, download passwords, put in Trojan NLMs. So you can download the dev kits for all the Netware stuff online off Novell.com. It's all free to be able to compile and write your own NLMs. So, I mean, pretty much the sky's the limit, and you have full reign on the system. So this is a big problem. You definitely just don't want to leave it there. So, of course, we got these big problems, and, some of them are scary, and the cross-site scripting ones aren't. Fine. Well, I mean, mitigating them is not too tough. Again, sample scripts, delete them. You don't need them there. I mean, they're not doing a whole lot of anything anyway. I had one client, and only one client in my entire life, who made an application based around a sample script. Right? And so they had to leave one of the view code sample scripts there because they were using it for something stupid. They made their own IDE around it. But beyond that, you should be able to blow away all those sample scripts. No one should be using them. Why people don't do that off the bat, I don't know. So, but delete the sample scripts. Unmap all the handlers, preferably all of them, but a better way to phrase that is all of them that you're not using. If you're using that basic and stuff, then you're kind of between a rock and a hard place because you depend on the functionality, which of course has vulnerabilities in it. And then, it's a matter of getting a patch. But as for a workaround, just unload all those handlers, and it's not a problem. Question? In that original configuration file, way back in, it was slide 5. I showed all the SP directories are mapped to this, and the NSN directories are mapped to that. I mean, if you're really concerned, I have a little time, so I'll go ahead and show you what the exact config files look like and what you'd have to change. So let me just load those up. All right, so here we see the Apache module. I don't want to focus on this one because everyone knows Apache, so let's look straight into the Netscape one. Here's the Netscape file. And let me make this a little more readable here. All right. Okay, so what you can see is all these extensions, you'll start seeing them here. Like here's all the .asp and .nsp extensions. Just uncomment out these lines. Here are all the other loads for the other extensions. Again, uncomment out these lines. If you don't need that support, comment it out, restart the server, and you won't have that functionality anymore, and you won't have those vulnerabilities anymore. But you see there, this is where the LCGI is mapped to the LCGI bin handler, and the webdev is mapped to the webdev handler directory, and the netbasics mapped to the netbasic directory, and all that stuff. So it's just a matter of uncommenting out these lines. This is the obj.conf, and it's located in the Novonics sweet spot. Then like your HPS- your server name conf directory, your typical Netscape Enterprise configuration files. Nothing fancy, nothing unique about this stuff. It's all simple. If you're a Netscape admin, an iPlanet admin, this is all old hat. It's all standard out-of-the-box stuff. It's just a matter of going in the config file and looking at it and removing all the stuff. Now, granted, Windows gives you a nice GUI where you can uncheck the IDC handler and remove the IDA handler. Here, you have to be mundane and edit a text file. How bad is that? No GUI stuff. But, I mean, still, just comment out those lines. Put a little pound sign, the little hash or whatever you call it in your language, in those lines. Hi? Yes, you could do that. Just write a cute little Perl script that goes in and cleans up all the configs. There you go. There's an idea for the next Novell Nimda worm. It'll go in, exploit the bugs, and clean up after itself and secure them. So that'd be a good bug. I'd allow that in my network. Let the worm in, and it'll automatically fix you. And then it'll leave and not, constantly propagate out. It may suck up your bandwidth, but at least you're secure afterwards. Hey, there's an idea. So that's a possibility. Who knows? Maybe I'll do that for fun. So we'll see. But the Apache config is pretty much similar. I mean, if you're an Apache admin, if you play with the config files and you know exactly how to go in, just do searches. Just grep for NSN and go through and you'll find the exact spots where the NSN handler's loaded. You look at all the virtual directories and virtual mappings and the script aliases in your Apache config, and you can fix those just as easily. So, not rocket science, it's not very hard. You just have to pull up the config file, make some modifications, restart the server, and away you go. So, get out of there. Let's go back to the presentation. And of course, one thing that's, you got to make sure you do, Netware 6. And Netware 5, whatever, when you A-bend, it says, hey, I had a critical error, not cool. I wrote the results to the A-bend log, just thought you'd like to know, and I shut down all the bad apps. If it was a hugely, bad A-bend that core system couldn't continue, it gives you a blue screen equivalent of, hey, really bad processor shut down, can't continue, I'm puking and exiting. With Netware 6, by default, at least on the installations I have, when something A-bends, even if it's just a minor, teeny tiny, who cares about it, userland app program, CGI script, this A-bend log comes up, stops the entire server, and says, whoa, bad stuff happened. User, should I write this to a log? Do you just want to quit? Do you want to scream and panic and fear? Gives you this cute little menu option. But the thing is, it stops all processes in that state. So great little denial of service. If you can cause even a trivial A-bend, and the admin wasn't smart enough to go in and configure it so that A-bends are automatically handled and logged and done with, and don't interrupt the rest of the services. Great denial of service. Get something to puke, it takes, everything is now off limits. And it won't work until someone consoles or gets on the console and says yes to that damn little menu thing for the server to continue. So, and I'll go ahead and show that to you because that was the whole NSN handler overflow. So let's see if we can overflow it, and I'll show you an A-bend here. And exactly what I'm talking about. So. I got a little ambitious with my buffer overflow, way too big of a buffer. Or way too big of an overflow. So in the meantime, let's go over okay, so here we go, A-bend. Here's our little Netware. I'm puking. Okay, press S, Y, or X to continue, please. And the problem is here, now if you go do web requests and stuff, things are not going to be responding. Because if you look right here, it says encountered a code in the server.nlm, right? The core functioning server. So, everything is stopped at this point. Everything is suspended. Does the rconsole function? I don't know. I bet it probably doesn't. So you might actually need physical access to the machine to actually say yes here. But I'm told it's a good practice admin thing to go in and set it up so A-bends are automatically handled. And I assume that, and that's a no-brainer move. But this is what happens when you don't. And unfortunately, this is default. So I hit my S here, and things go back to normal. And of course, I have to hit another key after S, Yes, do you really want to do that? And now things are finally running. That module is done, and the ABN log now has the whole bunch of stuff as far as what was overflowed and the stack traces and all those things. Which also I want to add too, for those actually doing research and being ambitious and trying to write Netware shellcode, Netware actually has embedded included debuggers. It's like, what is it, left shift, right shift, control, do a spin and chant something, and you can pull up a debugger. It's a weird key combo that's not normal, but you can pull up an entire debugger and get stack dumps and poke and read registry and all kinds of other stuff. So it's not like you need soft ice to throw on top of Netware to be able to do this stuff. It comes with free soft ice for everyone if you get Netware or soft ice equipped. And what's really, really, really cool is that web remote manager console I was telling you about running on port 8008, 8009 have a web GUI version of the debugger. You can do memory dumps, stack traces, and all that stuff over the web. So you don't even need console access anymore. It's really weird, but yeah, it's all there. I mean, and I think it's actually really cool and really functional. But it's just really strange that it's like I never debugged a system using an HTTP interface. That was a first for me. So definitely interesting stuff. All right, so going back to the presentation. So those are the workarounds. Now, of course, again, what happens if you're actually using these things? You're using the Perl handler or using the NetBasic handler. A simple workaround of removing the handler entirely is not going to work. Well, I've all these problems I've told the Novell, over a month ago, like mid to late June, I believe, is when it was. And they said a lot of them, or some of them already fixed, particularly in the Netware 6 SP1 already, which was out. And the ones that weren't fixed, they were going to fix in that support pack. And so the support pack was due out mid-August, early mid-August, so relatively around now or coming up. And the support pack 2 betas are already out. And those may or may not fix some of the problems. Hopefully they do. But in general, I mean, there's patches, Novell's working on it, so it's not like you're stuck. But of course, I'm being kind of vague on it because I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on. So what I'm going to actually do is actually invite Ed Reed, who is the security manager or the security czar for Novell, who's actually in charge now of all of this, and he's going to kind of go over exactly what patches are coming out when and some other fun security things going on at Novell. So let me go ahead and pass the mic to him.
Thank you, sir. I would introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I was with Novell for about 5 years, up until about 2.5 years ago, and rejoined Novell at the end of June. And one of the first things that they did when they put me into the slot was to talk about vulnerability response processes. And would you please answer RFP's questions? So that's why I'm here today. We're recognizing that things have changed. We're not an IPX shop. In fact, as you point out, debugging things over HTTP, the motto inside Novell has been, we've got to be able to do everything right over HTTP. I just don't know if they quite intended that. But certainly, it's time for us all to move on and to change the business as usual process for Novell. And so we're really announcing today that we will begin publishing security alerts through BugTrack, through CERT, and through other places that you inform us in general need to be published to. We'll consider additions to that list. We have created a new website that's online today at support.novell.com/security-alerts, and would encourage you to take a look at that. What you'll find there is a list of some of the patches which have been published recently or which are coming back in in response to alerts that we've seen within the last 30 to 60 days or so, sorted by products. I don't think I'm doing that. Oh, is the battery? Okay. Sorted by products, and if you get a chance, I don't know if you've got wireless here or not. All right, no, so we can't show it to you here, but you can take a look at it. So So we'll switch over to this mic instead. Included on that page is a new class of thing that you can tell us. There have been defect reporting processes and customer input requests for new features, and of course customer problem submit mechanisms. Now there is a vulnerability issue support insert mechanism, so that you can tell us about your vulnerabilities. We don't yet have our PGP key up there, but we will try to have that up within the next day or two for you to use, so that you can tell us about vulnerabilities, and we will strive as we continue improving the process to make it so that you can track that progress with us as we work to resolve the issue and get the feedback back to you. We've created a cross-functional team internally that I'm the head of. That cross-functional team includes worldwide support processes, worldwide support services, who is actually driving the actual execution of the business process. Includes representatives from the BizOps, who are folks who help out the system moderators, or the moderators of the various different net news moderated groups that provide informal customer support. Product management, product engineering, public relations, legal, and you'll see their input to the process here in a few minutes. And we're putting new processes into place to make sure that we're capturing for tracking vulnerabilities as they are reported to us. You can provide us with the information through the Security Alerts website or email to secure@novell.com. And as I say, there is a PGP key for secure at the MIT PGP keyring key server, and we'll be posting that to the website as well, so that you can provide us information in a secure fashion. In addition, the folks that work with the SysOps will be able to feed us inputs, and as well as customer calls, normal support vehicles, our own IS&T, and from what we find on people's websites. I'm going to let you read the policies text here yourself and say that we're trying very hard to be reasonable in terms of acknowledging that we want to provide you with as much information as we responsibly can, as soon as we can. And generally that means as soon as we know what the fix or the workaround is, to be able to tell you. We will strive not to tell you about exploits that are either theoretically or practically not possible to defend against. And we will strive not to tell you about exploits which may severely impact other competitors in things as well. We, from time to time, hear from people that are like CERT, who have vendor liaisons, that there's a problem they're familiar with, and they're working the problem, and they want to make sure the vendors know about the problem and have fixes ready for it, and nobody talks about it until vendors have had a reasonable amount of time, which the CERT defines to be 45 days, to get their act together before they go public with the exploit code. So we will support those efforts as in our attempt to be good citizens of the community. We have to reserve the right to decide what to tell and what not to tell. That's just the way this world works. So we can't stand up here and promise to tell you everything. What we can do is to reassure you that we're here to try to help our customers secure their environments. And that's really what we're striving to do. It is ultimately the customer's responsibility to secure their customers' environments. And we see as an important part of our responsibility to help customers be able to do that. We don't commit to ship bug-free code, but we do commit to try to be responsible for it. So that's the list as it appears on the website this morning, various different exploits and things. And Those links are all links to TIDs, technical information documents that include the patches to be downloaded. And since our internal SEs have started finding out about this website, we're busy flushing the backlog, if you will. And it is likely that you will see an unusual number suddenly of these things showing up, because we haven't done this before. The TIDs have been out there, but people have had the devil's own time figuring out how to find them. And now we're about making it easier for people to find these things. And so there is going to be an increased degree of visibility and awareness of these things, and we don't think that's a bad thing. We just think that's recognition of the work that we've been doing to take care of problems up to now, and now doing a better job at communicating with customers. The CSP8, which is the Consolidated Support Pack release that has been in beta and is getting ready to come out, I'm hearing may release Monday or Tuesday. So it sounds like it's good to go next week, unless there are some new showstoppers hit. And they apply to a lot of these issues that had been identified, particularly the information disclosure and the cross-site scripting issues, by, guess what, deleting those files if they're installed, right? And suggesting that you not reinstall them on production systems, because again, this is largely about the sample code that's out there to show people how to do it. And we're revving this TID that I cite here to say this in English for administrators as well. As we get to some of the more entertaining things that RFP came up with for us to talk about, the NDS login brute force attack that was mentioned, I think we could sit around and discuss whether or not the NDS login lockout, password lockout mechanism would help keep the dictionary attacks from occurring. But we do recognize that as soon as you have some sort of an intruder detect user lockout mechanism, that in itself constitutes a denial of service opportunity, right? Because if you can take out individual users or systems along those lines, you can certainly become annoying. And there may be things that we can do to improve that. We'll take a look at it. As far as some of these session servlet and servlet manager issues, I've created some new issues for us to track internally, so that we can take a look at and understand, you know, whether access controls are being applied appropriately, whether there's a chroot mechanism that we can use to try to keep people from crawling around outside of the server routes that they're supposed to be working in. And quite frankly, I don't know yet. We're taking a look at those. I think the advice that we got here, which was to unmap the handlers if you're not using them, is a good start. I really like the Perl execution problem, and I'm going to be spending some time tomorrow on that one. Unmap it if you're not using it, please. And on some of these others, as you see, we've opened a few additional issues to track with engineering to identify what the nature of that problem is and try to work through those. Legal has to contribute something to a process like this. And I guess it is kind of interesting to consider the need for this in light of some of Mr. Clark's remarks yesterday. But this speaks for itself. As for questions and comments, by all means, use the secure@novell.com email address, and take a look at the new website when you get a chance. That's it.
Just want to thank Ed for and Novell for sending them out. And just so you know, it's like I came up with this wacky idea. Ed emailed me maybe 2 weeks ago, a little bit over 2 weeks. He's like, I'm now the new point of contact and stuff. I'm going to be helping with your issues. And so last Friday, I'm like, hey, you want to come to Vegas and come up on stage? So Novell was able to turn around, in how many days? Like 5 days. They turned around and got a plane and got them out here, and they got all this stuff up and running. Like, okay, we'll try to commit to getting it done, and they were able to do it. Which is pretty impressive, and what they're trying to do is pretty impressive. I know some people are like, it's about time. They're getting up to speed, but looking at what it really is and what it's going to provide, particularly for the Netware field, that's a big step. So, I'm glad and I'm really excited that they're doing that, and I'm really thankful that Ed and Novell were able to come out and talk about it. So. We're kind of coming up on the last 5 minutes here. So, any really big immediate questions? And I want to say big, because if they're small, talk to me later, because I have a couple more small announcements that'll take up that last 5 minutes. So, anything that's a burning desire that has to be answered right now? So, no? Okay. So, now of course, all this stuff is going to be on my website, wiretrip.net. I'll give a copy of the PPT to the Black Hat folks. So we've got about 5 more minutes here, and I want to wait. There's more. We got some more stuff. It's the day of announcements. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over my mic here to some other people that are going to be talking about some other fun, interesting things that I'm involved in, other people are involved in that, it's not necessarily network-related stuff, but it's going to be cool community impact, big things. So with that ado, I'll turn it over to Steve Manswick from the VulnWatch moderator. So.
Hey, how's it going? As most of you know, I'm the one of the moderators of VulnWatch, and we've got a few announcements again this year. Last year RFP was kind enough to let us announce the list at the end of his talk, and today we're going to announce another list. We're launching Vuln Discuss, we're calling it, and just like the name hints, it's essentially a discussion list around the vulnerabilities that you're going to see announced on VulnWatch. We found a lot of people do want to discuss vulnerabilities and discuss the alerts that are posted, and we don't allow any of that on VulnWatch. So this now gives a forum for people to discuss that. We've also added some moderators. I'm not sure if David Litchfield's in the room here. I didn't see him. He's one of the moderators we've added, and we'll be announcing over the next few days some more moderators, probably I believe 2 or 3 more. The other, probably the big thing, and probably the most important thing other than just another mailing list, we've started the Internetwork Security Information Services Initiative. And essentially what this is, it's a formal partnership between a few open source type groups, namely VulnWatch, PacketStorm, the open source Vulnerability Database Project, and the ALDOS Web Defacement Mirror. We're going to be continue on with the not-for-profit, vendor-neutral, completely volunteer organization. So if anyone here has got some spare time and wants to help out, hey, let me know. Shoot us an email. We'll gladly take the help. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is sharing resources between all of the different projects in a central location. So instead of having to run over to 5 or 6 different sites to get what you need, you'll be able to go to one spot and get everything. And we're all going to cooperate and work together. Probably the biggest impact out of this is the open source vulnerability database project, and I'm going to turn that over here to Charles to talk about. The next slide there.
Hi everyone, I'm Charles. If you come to me afterwards, I'll tell you how to spell that. From SensePost, if you come to me afterwards, I'll tell you how to spell that also. I was asked to speak a little bit about the OSVDB. That's the open source vulnerability database project, which we're launching today. Essentially, the background to this project is that we want to launch completely open source for the community, by the community, free access database of vulnerability information. It's about as simple as that. The background to it is that SensePost, myself, and HD Moore from Digital Defense and some other guys had been building databases like this to assist us in the work that we do. And we figured it would make much more sense if we all got together and worked together. It would improve the quality of the data, ultimately help us do better work. So that's pretty much what's driving it. A whole lot of guys are involved, RFP's involved, Eric Parker from MindSec, the guys from cert.net, Steve over here, and a few other guys. If I've forgotten anyone, then I'm sorry. All these names. Basically, the status of where we are now is the website has been launched. We've pretty much clarified the concept, so we know what we want to do. Got a whole lot of the key players involved. At the moment, we're busy discussing the structure of the database, how it would all fit together, how it would link up to things like CVE and other databases, Nessus and their database. Once we've got that organized, we'll build the database, and then we'll complete building the front ends over which the vulnerability database can be accessed, and through which you'll be able to submit your submissions, I guess. And so we just want to encourage you to check the site out. That's the osvdb.org, and to give us your support. Any questions or comments, I think you can give them now, or you can join the list. What's that? That's...
We'll note it on the website.
Yeah, it'll be on the website, osvdb.org, and yeah, join in. Are there any questions now, I think?
Great. All right. So, kind of the whole thing with the whole Vuln Discuss and the ISIS initiative and the OSVDB is this whole, we have a lot of people privately and individually doing a lot of work. And the problem is, like, when it comes to vulnerability databases, maintaining a vuln database is a lot of work. I mean, Security Focus has an entire, company built around that, single fact. So, I mean, having everyone recreate, just reinventing the wheel and doing their own DB and populating and populating and populating 5 times over is nuts, because if they just join forces, that's 1/5 that the work that each one has to do, and you got a little more redundancy and failover and more people involved, and it'll scale better. So, that's kind of what encouraged all this, and a lot of people are hopping on board because, all the people involved pretty much had or were going to have private vulnerability databases being built. So we decided, screw it, let's just make one big one, we'll all cooperate. And the key thing here is that it's not owned by anyone, and it's not going to be sold. And when I say the information's free, I mean literally free. And we're not even talking like, browsing a web interface search free. We're talking like download CSVs and MySQL table dumps free. Like, you get the literal entire database, SQL statements, data raw and all. And in all of that, there's a lot of process involved as far as feeding in from VulnWatch, being populated into the database, having links straight to PacketStorm for the exploits, and links like NeoHaps's archive straight to the reference posts, other people donating information and cross-referencing. We've got like a ton, 2 dozen, 3 dozen volunteers, online for entering in the information. And I just, I really want to comment though, this is not just like a cool idea that's probably going to fall on the floor. The schema's done. The data is already coming in. The base population data is coming in from SensePost and DDI. They're volunteering what they already have, which is their full databases already. And we've got the people on board. The website's up. The servers are in place, and things are definitely cruising. And all of this came about in like 10 days. From start to where we're at. So yeah, we're only 10 days into it, but we have a lot to show for 10 days, and and give us another week, and we're probably going to have something for you to actually start accessing and using. We're going to cooperate with Aldis and PacketStorm and start having mirrors and propagating the data out. We're not about containing or controlling the data. We're just about getting it into one place and getting it organized so that anyone who wants to can get at it and use it. And if you have anything, time or help, to donate, resources to donate, or if your company wants to even do interesting things like provide mappings, between your product and like CVE stuff, I mean, we can incorporate all that. Just definitely contact us and let us know. There's lots of room. Even if your corporation wants to reuse the database, we're not stopping it. Hey, if someone wants to download the CSV dump and then resell the data as alerts or the access to a corporate database, which is just the same thing, fine, we're not going to stop that because the data is free. We just like to think anyone trying to resell the data that anyone can get for free is not going to work. That's the concept behind it. So, that's why we're not worried about giving out for free and people making money off of it, because, unless they add something on top of it, there's no value added there that they can make money on. So that's pretty much my time. I'm like 2 minutes over, so I think I'll be flogged. But if any questions, just go ahead and either email the individual people for the OSVDB or the ISIS initiative, or Ed, secure@novell.com, or you can email me, or you can contact me right after. Come on up and talk to me after this. And of course, any feedback, like I said, on business cards and stuff, you just want to bring them up and drop them off. As an incentive, I'll trade you. I'll give you my business card, which is cool and glossy and looks pretty, right? If you give me a card for yours. Even if you didn't write comments, I want business cards. So anyone who gives me a card, I'll trade them. So yeah, so thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it.